What to do if your PhD and your research are constantly on your mind? What to do if you feel that your research has basically consumed every single part of your life? If the only thing you can think of is your research, if the only thing you talk about is your research, and you just feel that that's the only thing that you do. And this video is inspired by a client of mine because last week we had a conversation exactly about that, and I said, wow, I need to talk about this more because no one actually warned me about this when I was doing my PhD, and clearly it's a problem for several people, so I wanted to share it with you as well. So it's a very common thing, and it's sort of praised in academia as well, not having like a life outside of the lab. So you see that people are sort of wearing it as a badge of honor, this thing that they are working extra hours, working weekends, working holidays, and so on. So it's very, very easy to get consumed and absorbed into that narrative of you have to work harder, you have to work more because this is how you prove your worth and dedication to research and so on. So especially if you're young, especially if you're unexperienced, it can be quite difficult to sort of resist that urge of working more. And especially since academia has this culture of praising that. So how can we detach our PhD from our life and ourselves? I feel this happens, as I said, because of this academic way of perpetuating this behavior and really praising that hard work that is not hard work per se. I would call it overworking and actually abuse, but well, everyone is free to choose how to live their lives. But what actually doesn't work what actually happens, like the consequence of that, is that you start to tie your self-worth to your PhD. And this is a very dangerous place to be, because then when your experiment fails, you feel like a failure. When your data doesn't show what you thought it's going to be showing, you feel like a fraud. You feel like it's a very, very fertile ground to sort of perpetuate that imposter syndrome, and then procrastination as a consequence, and then you are basically feeling miserable. So this is the main problem, and the solution to that isn't actually to work more. And believe me, because I tried it and it didn't work, because I was still feeling like I wasn't good enough. So and also when I coach my students, I always say that's really something that doesn't work, and they're like, okay, I'm sure it doesn't work, but let me try. And then they try it and they're like, yeah, it doesn't work because I'm just overwhelmed, overworked, and tired, exhausted. I don't feel like doing anything anymore. So this clearly doesn't work. But what does work? So what does work is having this sense of completeness, because I think that the main issue with research is that you do not see any tangible results of it until the very, very last stage, like finishing a thesis, wrapping up a thesis, wrapping up a paper, and so on. So how can the whole idea of this is how can we move that sense of completeness a little bit forward? And the strategy to do so is that whenever you build your to-do list, whenever you establish tasks that you're going to take for the next week or next month, you do not do it in a very vague way, like finish that analysis or figure out that thing. Because what does figure out mean? Like you can be spending months or years figuring something out and not having it figure out, which doesn't mean that you are not working. It means that you didn't reach that stage yet. But there are so many little steps that you already did and that you already tried, that you saw that didn't work, you know why they didn't work, and now you're trying something else. Having said that, the point is to establish very, very specific tasks that have two conditions. First, they are specific, and second, they are completable and in your control. This means, what do I mean by completable and in your control? If you say finish an experiment, there are many things that can go wrong and that can prevent you from finishing the experiment that are not directly linked to you and they are not in your control. For example, something can fail. No matter how much you plan, there is always something that can fail, which means that attaching your worth to that is not a very good idea, because if something external fails and then you feel like a failure and you don't feel like you completed anything despite spending 10 hours in the lab, it's something that can be quite problematic. on the other hand, what is important is to not say that, but say, okay, I will run this experiment 3 times. And that can take you a week, a month, or a year, but at least you know what is the tangible threshold. When I complete it once, I know that I completed it once. When I say I will clean up that figure, I will think about how to complete that figure so that it makes sense, so the legend is correct, so that the colors are color-coded in the correct way, and so on. So write one paragraph of section 2 of my paper. So this is something tangible and completable that you can do, and it's going to sort of solve and give you this sense of achievement before the very last stage of your thesis or research or paper publication and so on. So if this is where you're at right now with your research, I want to invite you to schedule a completely free intro coaching call with me. I will leave a link down below here where you can schedule it, because this is exactly what I help PhD students with. I help them make sense of their research in a way that is cohesive, coherent, and can be written, finished, published, submitted, and then published. So if this is where you're at, I again invite you to schedule a free coaching call with me, and in that call we establish exactly we take a look at where you're at with your research. We take a look at what are some next steps you can take in order to get closer to that finish line, whether on your own or with my help and support. So I hope that you found this video useful, and as always, see you in the next few days with another video. Bye bye.